So if you guys have tried this routine, let me know in the comments. I know the Athlean X fanboys are going to claim they've reached elite numbers doing this and they've got an 18-inch biceps and they're all bigger and stronger than me. I know you guys are. You guys are adorable. Chest up, shoulders back. Welcome to Revival Fitness, everybody, your home for gains and brains. And today, guys, we're going to do something we haven't done in a while, I don't believe, but we're going to do a full-fledged review of an entire program. So today we're going to be taking a look at Athlean X's perfect push-pull legs routine. But we have looked at one component of this before. I did a video on his so-called perfect leg workout last year at some point. I was sort of mixed on it. There were some parts I liked, some parts I didn't. A lot of people seem to think that I'm just a blind Athlean X hater because I've called him out on some of the stuff that he's been just egregiously wrong about, namely his whole anti-bulking stance and the fake weights and some other stuff he's done too. So we're going to, in this video, do a comprehensive breakdown of this plan because by default, if you're watching Athlean X, there's a 95% chance you're a novice. Maybe even higher than 95%.
I got 141 and 2/3 chance of winning. The numbers don't lie.
You guys know I'm not a huge fan of 6-day-a-week PPL. This is not exactly 6-day-a-week, but it is a similar framework. Push-pull legs, brah. So this article is on Jeff's website. Guys, if you're looking for the perfect workout to build muscle, I'd argue you don't need to look any further than a properly designed push-pull legs. I would argue. There's no more popular split these days than PPL, and with good reason. It's one of the most effective training splits. That's the reason it's been around for a while. Very scientific here, Jeff. So then he shows a graphic here. He says the benefits of PPL. Predictable, which means a synchronous split. That is true. I like that myself, just kind of knowing the days you're going to the gym. A lot of you guys, I don't know how some of you guys do this. Again, you must have just a lot of free time, but you'll be like, Monday, oh, I trained for 2 hours Monday. Oh, I'm off Tuesday this week. Next week, Wednesday, right? Your schedule's always varied. I just find for myself, the older I get, the more I'm working. Consistency is just much easier to deal with. That's an aside, though. He says it's predictable. He says recovery time is a benefit. If you're doing 3 days a week push-pull legs, I could see that. But 6 days a week push-pull legs, no, that's one of the biggest drawbacks is the fact that there's simply not enough full recovery time. We'll talk about that more soon. Easy to modify, allows for conditioning. Any split allows for conditioning. That's pretty hollow, if you ask me. And then he says it complements athletic training. Well, of course, Jeff has to shoehorn the athlete component in there. That's part of his brand. But weight training 6 days a week does not complement outside activities in sports. That's counterproductive, if anything. Most serious athletes are only going to be doing weights anywhere from 2 up to 4 times a week. A lot of times if they're in season, it's going to be only 2 or 3. So once again, right, if you're just a younger guy and don't know better, it's like, oh, Jeff said it complements athletic training. Talk to any serious athlete. Ask if they're lifting weights 6 days a week. They're not. So something unique about Jeff's routine, he switches up the order a little bit. He likes to flip it around so it's pull, push, and then legs. There's a very important reason why I do that, and it has everything to do with ensuring that you don't wind up overworking certain muscle groups. He says, it's the adjacency of those two, he refers to the pull and the leg day, that bothers me. I've split up the workouts so I'm not deadlifting and squatting back to back. So it could be taxing in that regard to go from a pull day into a leg day. So say you're deadlifting one day, you come in the next day and then squat. I get what he means. And also, too, you can't squat and deadlift on the same day. You can start off a day with some sort of hip hinge or a deadlift, then go into squats or vice versa. It's not impossible to do that, guys. If you're Jeff Cavalier with your chicken legs and weak lower back, it might be. But I understand where he's coming from with that. But once again, this is another vintage push-pull legs issue. If you simply were doing less overall days in the week, you could be getting more or less the same volume and the additional recovery time. He goes on to say, a PPL split allows you to do more than just a typical strength training program. And it's funny too, he says you can focus on other things like hypertrophy Do you not think you can do strength and hypertrophy on an upper-lower? That's the entire purpose of the upper-lower split. Same with full body 3-day. Any split whenever you start out with kind of lower reps at the beginning, you call this power building, or as I like to say, just effective training. You start out with that and then go into more accessory stuff for higher reps, higher volume generally. You're doing both at the same time. I love whenever these guys will say stuff, I am focused on hypertrophy, I don't train for strength. You have to get stronger somehow, guys. This never ceases to amaze me, but these guys act like they're just two totally different worlds. As if people training for strength are only doing 1 rep maxes and 3 rep sets and then they just leave the gym.
It's an urban legend that never happened.
The vast majority of serious, successful powerlifters, guys, are doing a lot of so-called hypertrophy bodybuilding training. They do it after they do their low rep sets. Which once again, most of the stuff Jeff talks about is general vanity training. There's very little serious strength or athleticism into it because he knows his audience, and they cope by telling themselves that they're athletes because they wear Adidas track pants, but you guys are just general lifters. So I'd say based on the premises that he has set up, we're off to a rocky start, but let's look at this program. So in line with how Jeff laid this out, we're going to go pull, push, legs, rest, pull, push, legs, rest. Which I know a lot of you are doing right now because you love to tell me in the comments. But let's take a look at the first pull day. So we have barbell deadlifts, 1 set of 5. Now some of you might be saying that that's very low volume. I've gotten guys tell me that too. A lot of the times I'll program only 2 sets of deadlifts a week and they'll be like, dude, shouldn't it be more? The reason this is included in so many programs, guys, especially novice programs, only 1 set of deadlifts, is simply because they're very taxing. So doing them for a lot of volume can give you some issues, and on top of that too, especially when you're new, deadlifts are an exercise you're going to be able to add a lot of weight to in a very short time frame. So you don't really need a lot of volume on them per se to get much better at them once your form is buttoned up. But we have 1x5 using 80% 1RM, and he wants us to perform 4 warm-up or ramp-up sets. I understand that, but if you're a guy who's only deadlifting 185 or 225 or something, you could do 135 and then just go into it, so that might be a little bit much depending on your strength level. But that checks out. Second exercise, chest-supported rows, 3 by 8 to 10. So that's a pretty standard, you could call it accessory exercise, or hypertrophy exercise for the back. If you have access to a chest-supported machine, that is very convenient. I know a lot of you guys don't. Depending on the bench setup you have in your gym, and my gym is very annoying like this because the incline benches have these giant knobs on them, so you can't really pull the bar all the way up, at least like you would like to, even if it's with dumbbells, because the dumbbell on the one side is going to hit it, so that's very annoying. But I like the thought process there, so we go from a barbell deadlift, which is going to be a bit stressful on the back, into a chest-supported row, which is pretty much totally alleviating any stress on the low back. Depending on how the rest of the program looks, I'm not sure how necessary a chest-supported row would be there, but either way, that's a good exercise for the back. On to number 3, the dumbbell lat pullover. 2 to 3 sets by 8 to 12 reps. Now, pullovers are something I don't do myself regularly anymore because they tend to bother my shoulders. If you can do them with 1 dumbbell in each hand, guys, that might make them a little bit easier to handle, or if you have a pullover machine, those are very solid. I think they're generally rare. Then we have the dumbbell high pull. That's essentially Jeff's version of an inverted row, and I understand why he does that because I've kind of done mine similar. I find that the typical upright row position can bother my shoulder a little bit, so this is more or less the same thing. So we've got relatively good choices so far. Then we go into biceps chin curls. Based on his website, that's just a chin-up. 3 times failure, and then that's supersetted with an overhead tricep extension. So we're throwing in some triceps here, I guess just for the sake of it. Then we finish up with angels and devils. Based on his website, this is essentially just like a modified Superman exercise. When you really stretch out, you kind of reach up and around. So that's pull day number 1. Now let's go on to push number 1. Remember, pull, push, legs. We're going to start with The barbell bench press, 4 sets of 4 to 6 reps. Uh-oh, is he training for strength? He says in parentheses, leave 1 to 2 reps in the tank. I'd say that's a good idea, especially on the bench press, or other heavy compounds like that too. Next we have high to low cable crossovers, so it's like a fly motion. Dumbbell shoulder press, 4x8 to 10. 1.5 side lateral raise. I guess that just means do 1 normal rep and then a partial, then another one. You might see people do that with squats and deadlifts too sometimes. They kind of stop halfway up. Then we go into the lying tricep extension, 3 times 10 to 12, superset that with the dumbbell waiters curl. Oh, not the waiters curl, Jeff. Ugh, it's so gimmicky. So thus far, we're doing biceps and triceps in some capacity on the pull and the push day. I'm going to assume that's repeated. So you're getting a good amount of arm volume per week, which is to be expected with Jeff, since his biceps are about the size of his quads. And then we finish up with rotator cuff external rotation. I think you could argue you'd be better suited doing the external rotation at the beginning of the workout as like a dynamic warm-up type of thing or really light exercise, then going into the bench press. Alright, now finishing up with the last part of the 3 consecutive days, we have the legs workout. Now something to note here, guys. He included 2 days, 1 separate for the pull and the push. On his video series as well as his website, unless I'm missing something, he only has 1 leg day. So you're basically left to repeat the leg day the exact same way or maybe alter the order a little bit. That's vintage Athlean X. He's got all this text and all this stuff about the upper body, then when it comes to legs, it's like, just do the same thing. But let's begin here. This is the one I reviewed in the first video I made a while ago, guys, so if you want to get a full breakdown of that, you can click the video in the top right. But we start with barbell squats, 4 times 4 to 6. Leave 1 to 2 reps in the tank. Can get down with that. Hip thrust, 3x8 to 10. Barbell or dumbbell alternating reverse lunge. I've said before, I think that's an underrated exercise. I like to throw in some unilateral leg work at least once a week for me and my clients. I don't care if it's a lunge, a split squat. I think split squats generally are going to be a bit more stable, assuming you have weight in both hands. You could also hold on to something too. But those are solid. Dumbbell single leg Romanian deadlifts. Okay, this is what I really got him for last time. So when he says the single leg RDL, he's not talking about like a beast stance one or whenever you kind of prop one leg up on a bench like you see a lot of girls do now. He's saying legitimately 1 leg. So your back leg is hovering in the air and you're reaching down. So right off the bat there, and his rationale is going to be like, functional mobility and all this stuff. That's fine. But a single leg Romanian deadlift, once you get even decently strong at this, the stability is going to really throw you off. I don't care how strong your shins and ankles are and everything. Guys will ask me too, they're like, can I do pistol squats as a main quad builder? And it's like, if you want to hold on to something, maybe. But if you're going to try to do some cool online video where, I did pistols with my hands up here and stuff, you're going to fail over and over, dude. Even if you can accumulate that volume, if you have all the time in the world to do that, every 3rd rep you're going to be, I stumbled, get my balance, do this, do that. It just interrupts the entire flow of the exercise itself and all your sets. So in terms of sheer size and strength and stuff, I don't see a purpose for single leg Romanian deadlifts unless you have the back leg propped up on something. Then it's more applicable. And then you go into the slick floor bridge curl. This is basically like a bodyweight hamstring curl. You lie flat on your back and do this. If that's all you have access to, or if you're extremely weak and immobile, that's fine. But this routine calls for a normal gym with normal equipment, for the most part at least. You could just do a seated or some other type of hamstring curl machine, guys. Or if you're at home too, if you're training out of a facility that does not have machines, these can be doable. You can also make these harder by attaching bands to a rack and then kind of tying them around your feet. You could start to do Nordic curls if you need to do that. But I think just the slick floor bridge curl by itself, you're going to get to a point where you're going to have to be doing dozens and dozens of reps in a single set to really get a good stimulus. So I think a hamstring curl machine here is better suited. And then we finish up with standing calf raises and the seated calf raises. You guys are going to skip that. I probably would too. Jeff also is skipping it. Nobody's doing calves. But now we're going to go into the second half of the week, so to speak. So let's assume that we've done 3 days in a row, take a rest. We're then going to be on Friday. So we're going to do a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, off on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, off on Monday, then repeat. So moving on to the second pull workout. We start with snatch grip deadlifts, 3 sets of 5. Those are pretty difficult. And he says, use weight you can do for 8 reps. So that's probably estimated RPE 7 to 8, so not going too intense with these. Second one, weighted pull-ups 3 times 6 to 8. And he says in parentheses, switch with number 1 if grip is compromised. He doesn't really indicate if you should or could be using straps on either of those things, I'm not sure. But given that we did deadlifts on the first pull day, you might be able to argue that the pull-up should be first here in general, but whatever. Next is the alternating dumbbell gorilla row. So we see in this clip here, he's essentially in sort of a tripod position, but he's not holding on to anything. Sort of like a quarter squat, hip hinge sort of thing. But he rows it, he gets a little bit of body English in there, so I guess you could call this a little bit of like a power style row. But then he switches grip every single rep. So he does left 1, right 1, left 2, right 2. Once again, man, I just don't see a point to this. And this sounds really cool, right? Like, oh yeah, gorilla beast mode, bro. I'm doing my gorilla rows. You could just do a simple one-armed row propped up on a bench or on a wall or on a post. That's also going to be more stable. Again, too, right? This is under the guise of probably like, oh, functional training and stuff. Your core is more activated. That is true. But I don't think this offers a whole lot of tangible benefits compared to doing just like a normal one-armed row. Then we go into the straight arm pushdown 2 to 3 sets of 12 to 15. This is a pretty standard sort of lat-biased exercise. You guys have seen me do this too, using ropes as well as kind of those big spud ink straps. If you're somebody like me who notices that your triceps really bear a lot of brunt on this exercise, switching to something that's more of a neutral grip or a little bit free moving compared to the straight bar, I think is going to help you out. So then we go into barbell or easy bar curls, 3 by 6 to 8. So it's a bit of lower rep range in terms of curls. Superset with tricep pushdowns, 3 by 10 to 12. Okay, pretty standard arm work. And of course, we couldn't do a Jeff Cavalier workout without face pulls at the end. So this pull day is a little bit more intensive on the low back. Not extremely, but more so than the first one. Now we're going to move into the second push day. So we begin with the barbell OHP, 4 by 4 to 6. He's had that rep range for pretty much all the main compound movements to start except the deadlift and the snatch grip deadlift. 1 to 2 reps in the tank. Underhand dumbbell bench press, 3 by 8 to 10. Now, I think Jeff has talked about this in the past too, guys. I have an old video as well about this phenomenon. If you search this online, like, does underhand grip work the upper chest more, because that's the mythology around it, you're going to see stuff that says 30% more, I think it was 30% more activation in the upper chest whenever you have a supinated grip. I have searched far and wide, guys, and I've never seen an actual citation on the sites that say this. I don't know what study they're referring to, because I think it doesn't exist. I think this is bro science, not so-called real science in its purest form. I think a lot of guys have just done underhand grip and said they feel it more in the upper chest, but I have yet to see any legitimate papers or studies that allude to this conclusion. And on another note too, are underhand dumbbell bench presses necessary? I don't think they are. I don't think they really bring a whole lot more to the table than a typical one. Maybe if you have some shoulder pain you're dealing with, it can help you there. You could also even do just a neutral grip dumbbell press. You could also do something like an incline bench at varying degrees if you want to target the upper chest. So once again, this is kind of gimmicky. I get the premise behind it, but I don't really think it's that necessary. So I just don't see a point to that, doing it underhand. We then go into dumbbell abduction rows. So in a way, this is almost sort of like a face pull inverted row kind of hybrid, because he's rowing it, but he pulls it high and then pulls it out. I would assume that's to get more emphasis on the rear delts and stuff. So we have the gorilla row and now the abduction row, right? I mean, you could just do something that isn't as gimmicky. Athlean X is very opposed to just doing basic normal rows, isn't he? Then we have the dumbbell floor fly. So I guess that's to just limit the range of motion, make sure you don't go too far. I've said this before myself, guys, if I'm going to do some type of fly motion, which we saw this in the first push day, I much prefer it to be with cables or bands, or even like a pec deck machine. I just find for myself that dumbbell flies, the tension doesn't stay there very well, they're more aggravating on the shoulders, I'm just not a big fan. Then we go into close grip bench press, 3x6 to 8. So I guess that's mainly for the triceps, following the same scheme, tricep into bicep superset or vice versa. Dumbbell curl of choice, can't argue with that. And then push-up plus. I think he kind of props himself up a little bit at the top to get the serratus more involved, but it kind of just looks like he's milking out a normal push-up concentric. And then if you remember, we're going to repeat the leg day. So it's just the same thing as it was. Alright, so I did some math, and I'm not going to show it all on the screen here. Just kind of roughly adding up the number of sets per week. And as you would expect, we have a lot of body parts that are over 16 sets a week. Now, I've talked about before, guys, check out the video in the top corner. I'm not a big fan of the 10 to 20 sets per muscle group per week, because that's very vague, and beginners especially, of course, they're going to gravitate to the 20 number, simply because it's higher and they think, oh, well, I have to do more to get more results. So for the chest and a lot of parts of the back, the arms and stuff, we're up to 18, almost 20 sets a week. So technically Jeff is in that 10 to 20 range, right? But beginners do not need that much volume. I don't care what you guys say. Nobody needs that much volume in general. I'd argue even really advanced lifters don't need that much. I mean, unless you're a legitimate pro bodybuilder with a ton of chemical assistance, I don't see any scenario in which you're going to seriously be doing up to 20 sets a week per a muscle group. But that's Athlean X, putting the bodybuilding back in strength, back in athletics. Now you'll notice this too, unless I made a glaring error, I did not see any direct ab work. And once again, Athlean X's brand is incumbent upon the fact that the dude is completely shredded. He's got ripped up abs. Now, I've talked about in another video previously too, guys. I just keep having you guys click up in that top corner. But Athlean X has given advice before on how to better get abs, and I think he contradicted himself when he said that. But I believe in that video, he mentions that you could be doing ab exercises just for 20 minutes a day, maybe at nighttime or in the morning, something like that. So maybe that was his thinking, not including ab work formally into this program. He assumes it's something you're going to pick up on your own. But once again, we're already in the gym 5 to 6 days a week on this plan. This is not exactly a low volume plan as I just outlined. And we're supposed to be doing abs. You see what I mean? You want to be doing abs even at the end of this. I'd say that's more realistic for most people, or at least more convenient than doing them at another time of the day. But even so, there's no direct ab training, which is going to go against a lot of the principles that he talks about with a stronger core, being on your feet athletically and stuff. And even if you don't do direct ab work, guys, your abs are going to get stronger if you do standing exercises, but they're not going to be as strong as they could be. So I found that odd, and then I mentioned this previously too, but I do not think this program is going to be truly sufficient for hamstrings. And once again, it's funny because Athlean X is a big sports guy. He's talked about his own knee issues in the past. And then the hamstring exercises he gives are wobbly single leg RDLs, the slick floor bridge curl, which most people are going to outgrow pretty quickly. I would say rapidly in a lot of cases. And there's deadlifts too. So 3 sets of the snatch grip deadlift, which deadlifts are going to build your hamstrings, but I think you could get some more direct work in there. And then 1 set of the conventional deadlift. So if we're talking the hamstring in sort of like a flexing position, the only thing we're getting with that is the slick floor bridge curl. There's no seated hamstring curl machine, kneeling hamstring curl, lying hamstring curl, anything like that. So I think this program, which again, Athlean X, it's not surprising, we're definitely lacking in that direct hamstring work. And you could argue as well even with the quads too. Because the 4x4 to 6 for the squats, a lot of you guys would say, well, that's not a proper hypertrophy rep range. Well, that's a huge chunk of your quad volume there. And keep in mind too, the back squats are also going to really hit the glutes and the adductors. The only other quad work is in the form of the reverse lunges. And I've said before, guys, I like the back squat and the reverse lunge. Of course I do. But we're still lacking in what you could say is some direct quad training too. Because we have the crossover and the flies for the chest. We have all kinds of variations for the back. We have the chest supported row, the straight arm pull down. There's tricep extensions and curls, 4 out of the 6 days. And then for the legs, it's like, yeah, here you go, just do this, right? So Athlean X already knows, which give him credit, he knows who he's marketing to. He already knows that his guys are going to half-ass the leg day in general. He probably assumes they're not even going to do the second leg day of the week. They're like, oh, well, there's not a second leg day, I just don't have to do it. And he's probably right. And I do think some of the exercise order on these days would benefit from being changed. Like I said earlier, I think the rotator cuff external rotation on push 1, he even says on his site this is more of a prehab mobility thing. I think that should go before the bench press to kind of loosen up your shoulders, kind of firm up the back before you do your pressing. I would put the dumbbell shoulder press ahead of the high-low crossovers too. Once again, the high-low crossover, that's more of a finisher isolation type movement. Any sort of compound shoulder press, I think, should take precedent ahead of that. Tricep extensions, lateral raises, okay, not much else to say about push 1 there. In terms of push 2, he has the same thing going on here. So we have the barbell OHP, underhand dumbbell press, but we have a close grip bench press supersetted with the curl of choice. Then we have the push-ups after that too. So we're doing floor flies, once again a finisher type of movement. That is taking precedent over the close grip bench press and the push-up plus. I don't see how that makes any sense because you're not going to be using a whole lot of weight on flies in general. Those could easily be last in the order here. I get the close grip bench part because it's like a tricep bicep superset, even though your chest and shoulders are also going to work on that as well. But I would change that too with the push day number 2. And then when it comes to the legs, changing the exercise order, the way he has it, I understand it, but the pull days we saw, for the most part, they're not really low back intensive, which he accounts for that too. You mean to tell me a beginner especially can't handle some even dumbbell Romanian deadlifts, let alone doing a legitimate hamstring curl machine, right? So if you're going to alter that, I would put some type of Romanian deadlift or more dominant hamstring exercise. If it's a machine, I'd keep it in that same slot, but if it's a Romanian deadlift, I would move it up above the reverse lunge. If you're going to ask me if you should do it, the answer is no. The volume in general is too high, especially if you're watching Athlean X. He's an anti-bulking guy. You're barely eating as it is, and then you're doing all this volume and in the gym so much. That's how you stay in novice purgatory. Gimmicky exercises, the lower body gets shafted. It's just not enough redeeming qualities to warrant actually doing this. So if you guys have tried this routine, let me know in the comments. I know the Athlean X fanboys are going to claim they've reached elite numbers doing this and they've got an 18-inch biceps and they're all bigger and stronger than me. I know you guys are. You guys are adorable, okay? But this program, it is what it is. It's there. I think there's more drawbacks than positives with it. And once again, you're going to be spending a lot of time in the gym to get less results than you could going 3 or 4 days a week. And as I always say, oh, but I like to go to the gym 6 days a week, bro. I'm fighting demons and all this stuff. Well, what you should fight is your urge to keep playing video games and go get a job and make use of yourself. Then you're going to be more useful in the gym on 3 to 4 days a week because you have less free time to sit around the gym watching guys like Athlean X. Get busier outside of the gym, then you're going to be even more productive in the gym with the more limited but useful time that you spend there. So if you guys have been following Athlean X for a while now, and you're not where you'd like to be in terms of physique, strength, size, all this stuff, I welcome you here with open arms. All I need you to do is admit that you were wrong. I was wrong too in the past. It gets all of us. But this has been it for me. Thank you guys very much as always for watching. Big ups to the Patreon supporters and the channel members for keeping us afloat here. And you can get in contact with me in the links in the description box down below to get your own training and eating in better order and escape novice purgatory. So I will catch you guys next time.